No one expected Earth to fight back. Not really. To most of the galaxy, humans were just another primitive species that had barely discovered faster than light travel. Their planet was small, noisy, polluted. Their leaders squabbled over invisible lines, and their people worshipped 1,000 different gods, many of them cruel. But what made humanity dangerous wasn't their weapons or even their technology. It was something worse. They didn't know how to surrender. When the Varn Dominion arrived, towering insectoids with hive minds sharper than any supercomputer, they sent a single envoy ship to Earth's orbit. It hovered over the Atlantic Ocean for days, blotting out the sky in 13 nations. On the 6th day, it broadcast a message to every frequency known to mankind, translated into every major language. Submit. You are not the first. You will not be the last. Your species will serve, or your world will burn. Most of the galaxy knew that voice. It was the same message delivered to thousands of conquered civilizations. From the ice dwellers of Thanos to the silicon beings of Delta IV. All had bowed before the Varn. Resistance had lasted, on average, less than 17 hours. There were no peace talks, no diplomacy, only domination. But humans weren't like the others. For a full day, Earth's networks went dark. Every government vanished into bunkers. Every military base went silent. Then, on the 7th day, a single message beamed back to the Dominion's ship. It was short, brutal, unmistakably human. Come and try. The Varn took it as a challenge. They liked that. It made the assimilation more satisfying when the prey fought back. On the 8th day, the sky above Earth split open with the arrival of the Varn fleet. Over 200 warships descended from orbit like silver daggers piercing the clouds. They hovered above major cities, New York, Shanghai, London, Nairobi, Mumbai. They expected panic, screaming, mass surrender. What they got was silence. Then the first shots were fired, not from the Varn, but from Earth. Laser platforms hidden in Antarctica sliced through the belly of the lead ship over the South Pole. In orbit, satellite swarms exploded into coordinated attacks, blinding Varn sensors and jamming communication channels. Stealth fighters launched from underwater bases near the Mariana Trench, targeting engines and communication arrays with surgical precision. Humanity didn't respond with diplomacy. They responded with fire. The Varn screamed, not because of the damage, primitive weapons weren't a threat to their hulls, but because of the sheer audacity. No species had ever dared to strike first. The humans didn't even try to negotiate. From that moment on, the Varn knew this wasn't a standard conquest. This was war. The news spread fast across the stars. The Galactic Council, long corrupted by fear of the Varn, watched the Earth conflict with uneasy fascination. Entire systems tuned into the battlefields. No one had ever resisted this long. 17 hours passed, then 24, then 48, and Earth was still standing. Cities burned, yes. Millions died in the first 3 days alone. But the Varn weren't prepared for the kind of war humans fought. They weren't prepared for nuclear-tipped missiles launched from secret silos. They weren't prepared for cyber warfare that turned their own drones against them. They weren't prepared for human insurgents who blew themselves up inside Varn ships with makeshift explosives, smiling as they died. And they definitely weren't prepared for what came next. A human message, intercepted and leaked by a rogue Varn technician, went viral across galactic channels. It read, "They came for peace through submission. We gave them war through unity. Humanity will not kneel." The galaxy watched in terror. Not because of what the humans had done, but because of what it meant. Someone had finally stood up and didn't just survive. They fought back. And they weren't done. They had underestimated Earth. And now the Varn were bleeding. By the 5th day, 13 Varn ships had been destroyed. Not disabled. Destroyed. Total annihilation. Gone from their fleet registry, their command link severed with nothing but static left behind. It wasn't just the losses that rattled the Dominion. It was how humans fought. Dirty, unpredictable, and relentless. A single Varn battleship crashed into the Mojave Desert after its navigation systems were hacked mid-battle. Its blackened wreckage was swarmed not by frightened civilians, but by armed militias and military units working in seamless coordination. Within hours, Earth scientists had pried open its power cores and reverse-engineered fragments of their tech. Humanity didn't just fight. They learned fast. Meanwhile, the United Earth Council, formed hastily in the chaos of the invasion, had one rule: no retreat. The fractured world governments that had spent decades pointing nuclear weapons at each other were suddenly united like never before. The United States shared command codes with China. Russia opened its vaults to French AI tacticians. Brazil and India combined their space programs to launch a retaliatory orbital assault. This wasn't politics anymore. It was survival. And then came the message that changed everything. In a secured Varn war room aboard their flagship, Commander Vakarn, an elder of the Hive wise with over 1,000 cycles of conquest, reviewed the human resistance footage. Each scene made his antenna twitch. A human soldier, barely out of his teens, dragging an injured Varn drone behind a fallen tank. Both legs broken, guns still firing. A woman armed with a repurposed mining laser, shooting down an assault drone from her rooftop before her building collapsed in flames. A child, no more than 7, screaming into a makeshift transmitter, "We're still here. Come and get us, you monsters." They weren't supposed to act like this. The Varn's doctrine was clear: fear breaks morale. And without morale, even the strongest species bend. But fear wasn't working on humans. Vakarn hissed to his advisors, "They embrace death. They savor defiance. We have made a mistake." Still, pride is a poison. The Varn didn't retreat. They doubled down. Reinforcements were called from the outer sectors. A second fleet, 3 times the size of the first, was already en route. They would scorch the planet from pole to pole if necessary. Back on Earth, humanity was preparing for that exact possibility. Deep beneath the Rockies, in an undisclosed location, scientists and military tacticians gathered around a glowing orb, the Varn Navigation Corps, salvaged from the Mojave wreck. One of them, Dr. Alina Garvey, stared at its humming surface. "This thing talks to their entire fleet," she whispered. "We just need to figure out how to talk back." "What are you saying?" asked General Iwata, his uniform torn and blood-stained from a blast that had leveled Tokyo's outer ring. "I'm saying," Alina said with a grim smile, "we can hijack them." And just like that, a new weapon entered humanity's arsenal. Not one of brute force, but of information warfare. As the second wave of Varn ships approached Earth, they were greeted with a signal. Loud, unfiltered, and filled with human noise, music, laughter, war cries, a cacophony of culture, history, pain, and pride, blasted through Varn comms. The humans had weaponized humanity itself. And while the Varn reeled from the psychological assault, Earth launched its counterstrike. This time, they didn't just defend, they invaded. The skies cracked again. The second Varn fleet entered Earth's orbit in perfect formation, gleaming black hulls like obsidian knives blotting out stars. Over 600 ships, each one capable of glassing a continent. But this time, the Dominion wasn't here to conquer. They were here to erase. The humans had humiliated them. Now the Varn wanted to burn Earth into a lesson for every other species watching. But Earth had changed since the first attack. In underground bunkers and floating command centers, humanity waited not with fear, but with calculation. The stolen Varn Navigation Corps had become their ace. Dr. Alina Garvey and her cyber warfare team had cracked just enough of the alien protocols to do the unthinkable. They couldn't override the entire fleet, but they could turn their ships against each other. As the Varn began descending, a single command pulse, mimicking their internal fleet codes, was launched from Earth's orbital station, Last Light, which had been silently constructed in the weeks of chaos. The signal hit 6 ships directly. Their engines flickered, their internal lights blinked, and then they pivoted. Without warning, the 6 hijacked ships opened fire on their own. The sky erupted with blue plasma bolts and screaming metal. The Dominion fleet staggered in confusion as their own units turned rogue. Chaos tore through their formations. The Varn screamed into their hive mind command. But the signal was scrambled, hijacked by bursts of Earth's viral music files, human propaganda clips, and screams of laughter from children's cartoons. They didn't understand it. That made it worse. Commander Vakarn, watching from the flagship, howled in fury. "They have poisoned the signal. Destroy the traitors. Burn everything." On Earth's surface, humanity didn't waste a second. In major cities, the counterattack began. The African Union's rail guns in Nairobi punctured two low-flying Varn dreadnoughts like paper. In Canada, cryo-missiles launched from deep forest outposts froze the hulls of descending troop carriers before shattering them in midair. Swarms of modified drones, created in secret Chinese labs, blanketed the skies, using hacked Varn AI to outmaneuver their creators. But this time, the humans didn't stop at defense. From secret bases in Kazakhstan and beneath the oceans near Greenland, Earth launched its most desperate gambit, Project Valkyrie. They had reverse-engineered a Varn atmospheric shuttle, fitted it with a hybrid propulsion system and a primitive human warp drive, and filled it with the best soldiers Earth had left. Not the elite, not the strongest. Those were already dead. These were the last willing suicide volunteers. Among them was Captain Ray Calder, former Air Force. Face scarred from the first day of the invasion, eyes cold as steel. He stood in the humming cargo bay of Valkyrie 1, strapping into his harness, his voice calm through the comms. "We don't expect to come back, but we'll take as many of those bastards with us as we can." The plan was insane. They were going to board the Varn flagship mid-orbit. Most of the council back on Earth had voted against it, but desperation had silenced doubt. If they could take out the flagship, the hive brain, they might shatter the Dominion's chain of command. The Valkyrie launched up through the storm clouds into the fire of the descending armada, twisting between plasma fire and debris. Two escort fighters exploded beside them. A third lost control and veered into a Varn cruiser, sacrificing itself to clear the way. Calder didn't flinch. Inside the flagship, alarms screamed. The Varn were already in disarray, trying to distinguish rogue signals from real commands. They never saw the Valkyrie until it was too close. With a thunderous crash, the shuttle slammed into the hull of the Chrysath, melting its own nose to punch through. The breach opened. A team of 12 humans surged into the hive corridors, guns blazing, oxygen levels dropping. The Varn fought back, shrieking and swarming from the walls. But the humans were faster, meaner, desperate. In the heart of the ship, Calder planted the core charge, built from Earth's last reserves of antimatter, rigged to blow a hole in the command brain big enough to kill a moon. "Tell Earth," he breathed into his comm, voice shaking as blood soaked his armor, "tell them we made it count." Then silence. From Earth's surface, they saw it. The explosion that tore the Varn flagship in two. A sun blooming in orbit. A shock wave that knocked half the fleet off balance. The hive mind went silent. And for the first time in Varn history, the enemy fleet hesitated. The hesitation lasted only 6 seconds. But in war, 6 seconds can change everything. The Varn fleet, suddenly without direction, floated in a disoriented pattern above Earth's orbit. Their formation broke. Their precision vanished. What once moved as one now drifted in jagged pieces, like a beheaded serpent thrashing in its death throes. On Earth, commanders didn't wait for confirmation. The explosion from the flagship had been enough. Calder's final act had bought them a chance. Just a sliver. But that's all humans ever needed. "Execute Iron Requiem," General Iwata ordered, eyes red with sleeplessness, voice hoarse but alive. Iron Requiem wasn't a defense plan. It was Earth's offensive contingency. The moment the hive mind was disrupted, every remaining air, sea, and space unit was ordered to push forward, using every ounce of firepower left. It was a suicide assault. But this time, it wasn't to survive. It was to win. From the Andes to the Himalayas, missile silos burst open like old scars. Ballistic warheads, both kinetic and nuclear, screamed skyward, painting trails of fire behind them. On the seas, stealth submarines emerged like predators, launching salvos of torpedoes aimed at ships still hovering over the oceans. Even commercial satellites, long useless since the war began, had been rigged with makeshift payloads and crashed into the enemy. Every last ounce of humanity's rage was thrown into the void. The Varn, for all their technology, had never faced war like this. Not like humans fought it. Not with everything on the line. Not with dirty, ruthless, teeth-bared fury. Without their central command brain, the Varn ships relied on subcommand algorithms to respond. But the algorithms weren't prepared for chaos. They weren't built to adapt to human madness. They failed. One by one, the mighty ships began to fall. Some exploded in the upper atmosphere, raining burning shards over already ruined cities. Others drifted aimlessly, intercepted and boarded by human strike teams wearing scavenged Varn armor. A few tried to flee, but even retreat was no longer safe. The moment a ship turned away, Earth's fighters chased it with savage precision, blowing out their engines and letting them tumble into orbit until they cracked apart. The world watched. Every corner of Earth, every remaining screen, every underground bunker tuned into the feeds. They saw Varn dreadnoughts collapsing in flame. They saw human soldiers planting flags, human flags, on alien hulls. They saw something no other species in the galaxy had ever seen before. They saw the Dominion lose, and not just lose, be broken. Across the galaxy, those watching on hidden channels and forbidden broadcasts trembled. The Varn had ruled for centuries. Their empire stretched across 1,000 systems. They'd never been defeated, until now. On a civilian outpost in the fringes, a young insectoid from the core species whispered to his elders, the humans, they did it. On a jungle moon in Sector 12, a reptilian resistance group cheered in secret, tears in their scaled eyes. If they can fight, one hissed, so can we. Hope, the most dangerous contagion of all, began to spread. Back on Earth, amid the ruins of cities and the stench of death, survivors emerged. Some from bunkers, others from rubble. The air was still thick with smoke, but the skies were clearing. No more ships loomed above. Only the wreckage remained. General Iwata stood atop the rubble of what had once been Tokyo's outer defense wall. He looked up at the distant stars and didn't smile. There was no joy, only silence and grief. We lost everything, he said to the aide beside him. And we still have to rebuild. But we're free. In a recovery tent outside what had once been Berlin, Dr. Alina Garvey sat beside a cracked data console, watching the logs. Calder's final message had played again and again on every screen, tell them we made it count. You did, she whispered. God help us, you really did. But Earth didn't have time to grieve because less than 24 hours later, something else happened. An incoming transmission was detected. Not from the Varn, not from Earth, but from deep space beyond any known system. The message was simple. Humanity, we saw what you did, and we are coming. The transmission played on every frequency Earth had left, over makeshift radios in refugee camps, on flickering screens in military bunkers, even through the cracked speakers of destroyed comm towers half buried under rubble. The voice was cold, not robotic but ancient, measured, deliberate. It didn't threaten. It simply declared, humanity, we saw what you did, and we are coming. Panic swept the remaining pockets of Earth's civilization. At first, many thought it was a trap, some last Varn deception to shake morale. But when the signal was traced, the truth hit even harder. The message hadn't come from anywhere near the Dominion's controlled territories. It had come from beyond the galactic rim, from the old silence, a place spoken of only in forgotten scrolls and corrupted star charts, a region where even the Varn feared to tread. A dead zone where entire scouting parties had vanished without a trace. Where signals went in but never came out. And now something had come out. In the shattered ruins of the United Earth Council's emergency HQ, relocated beneath Iceland's volcanic crust, what was left of Earth's leadership gathered. They stood in a room where every other seat was marked by the absence of those who hadn't survived. A hologram flickered in the center. The message played again, we are coming. Dr. Alina Garvey's voice broke the silence. It's not a Varn dialect. I've scrubbed it through every language processor. Whatever this is, it's older. Way older. General Iwata leaned forward. Could it be another invasion? I don't know, she said, rubbing her temples. But anything that waits in the silence and speaks now, after the Varn are broken, this isn't coincidence. A deep voice chimed in from the far end of the table. Colonel Hakim said, leader of Africa's last air regiment, maybe they were waiting to see if we were worth their attention. Maybe defeating the Varn just put us on someone else's map. Someone else. That thought alone was enough to turn stomachs. The room went quiet again until finally, someone dared to say what they all feared, what if we've just woken a god? They had no answers, only a location. The source of the signal had been triangulated, barely, thanks to Calder's team having rerouted orbital sensors before their final run. It wasn't precise, but it pointed to a dead sector called Marex Theta, a space with no recorded planets, no habitable moons, and no reason to exist. The signal had come from the black between stars, but it had been directed at Earth specifically, personally. So Earth did the only thing it could. It answered. The response was short, not aggressive, not pleading, "We see you too. Come and speak." It was a gamble. But after surviving the Dominion, Earth had no illusions left about safety or peace. They were bloodied, broken, and nearly extinct. But they were awake now. Awake in a galaxy that had tried to ignore them. Awake in a universe that was watching. 5 days passed. On the 6th, a tear opened in space above what remained of Earth's moon. It wasn't a ship. Not in the way anyone understood. It was more like a wound in the cosmos, a dark bloom that pulsed and bled light. And from it came a presence, not visible, not physical, but undeniable. Every mind on Earth felt it. A pressure behind the eyes, a whisper at the base of the skull. Some collapsed, others screamed. Most just fell still, unable to speak, as if the gravity of another reality had suddenly passed through them. Then a voice, this time inside their minds, "You have chosen war, and you have survived. Now we must decide what you become." In orbit, Earth's last surviving warship, the Kavinsky, barely patched together from 3 others, sent a hasty transmission, "Identify yourselves. What authority do you represent?" The answer chilled the stars, "We are the architects, the ones before memory, the keepers of the first fire. You have broken the chain. You have killed your gods. Now we must judge if you are ready to replace them." The signal ended. No demands, no attacks, just a promise and an invitation. The world didn't cheer. It didn't cry. It held its breath. The architects. No one knew what they were. Not truly. Not even the Dominion had records of them, at least none that survived. Every database, every scrap of scavenged Varn intelligence turned up the same thing whenever Marex Theta was mentioned: redacted, corrupted, forbidden. And yet, Earth now had their attention. In orbit, the wound in space pulsed again. It didn't widen. It didn't release ships. It simply remained, watching, waiting. A silent star-bleeding curiosity. Humanity had become a subject of interest. Inside Earth's remaining command centers, fear turned to obsession. Dr. Alina Garvey hadn't slept in 3 days. She stared at the sensor data pouring from the anomaly. Gravitational ripples that shouldn't exist. Quantum fluctuations that ignored every known law of physics. Whatever the architects were, they weren't bound to reality in any way humans understood. "I think they're multidimensional," she murmured to her assistant, voice raspy. "Not just aliens, but something that exists across timelines, across everything. Like gods." Alina looked at the anomaly, her eyes dry and bloodshot. Number worshippers. Meanwhile, far below, on the crumbled edge of what was once Chicago, a broadcast began again. The architects were speaking not on screens, not through devices, through people. It began with a child, a mute girl in a relief shelter who suddenly stood, her eyes glowing white, her voice echoing in a tone too deep for her throat: "We have watched your wars, your hunger, your fire." Then in New Zealand, a blind monk walked into the sea and shouted the same message to the crashing waves: "We have seen your defiance, your cruelty, your will." And again, in the sky, the wound pulsed, responding. Then came the ultimatum. Through the bodies of the chosen, across continents and time zones, the architects spoke in unison: "Humanity, you stand on the threshold. Choose. You may ascend or be undone. Ascend or be undone." What did that even mean? At first, some thought it was a trick, maybe a psychological attack from a species far beyond understanding. But the architects made no demands, no threats. They simply left the choice. And the clock. Earth had 7 days. 7 days to decide whether to accept the invitation to ascend or reject it and seal itself off from whatever came next. Inside the council chambers, debate turned to chaos. "What if it's a trap?" shouted Colonel Said. "They want us to agree so they can erase us." "Or maybe they want to help," Alina countered. "They've seen what we're capable of. Maybe they think we're worthy." "Or maybe," Iwata muttered, "they want us to replace the Dominion as their enforcers." That was the unspoken fear, that all this, Earth's war, the fall of the Varn, the eyes of the galaxy turning toward humanity, wasn't just survival. It was a test. But no one could agree on what the right answer was. Scientists wanted to accept. Soldiers didn't trust it. Politicians feared they'd already lost control. And in the streets, among the broken, the starving, the traumatized, people were split too. Some prayed to the architects as gods. Others cursed them for interfering after the war was won. Most didn't care. They just wanted food, shelter, and peace. By day 3, the world was boiling over again. On day 4, everything changed. A second rift opened. This one over what remained of the Atlantic Ocean. But it wasn't the architects this time. It was them. The Varn. What was left of them, not a fleet, not an army. Just a single battered vessel limping through the void. Its hull scorched and cracked. Its signal desperate, we surrender. The galaxy's monsters had returned, not to conquer, but to beg. General Iwata stared at the transmission in stunned silence. They're afraid, Alina whispered. They saw what's behind the curtain. They know what the architects are, and they'd rather kneel to us than face them alone. That was the turning point. The Varn, the terror of the stars, the architects of billions of deaths, were now on their knees. And humanity? It stood between annihilation and ascension and had 3 days left to choose. Day 5 dawned with ash in the sky. Fires still burned across the planet. Some set by war, others by fear. The choice hung over humanity like a sword made of light, ascend or be undone. And no one could agree on what either meant. Across Earth, every voice now screamed for attention. Religion surged. Conspiracy ran wild. And worse, governments began turning on each other again. The unity forged in the blood and smoke of the Varn invasion was fracturing. In what was left of Paris, a mob stormed a surviving data tower, demanding Earth's leaders reject the architects and keep humanity human. Across the globe in Indonesia, cults wearing silver masks stood on cliffs, chanting for the great taking to begin. In New America, a rogue faction of the military seized a forward launch site and fired a test missile directly into orbit, aimed near the rift. It vanished mid-flight. Gone. No explosion, no trace, just gone. The architects didn't respond, not in words. But something changed. The skies began to bleed light. Crimson threads stretched across the upper atmosphere like torn fabric, rippling with colors no human eye had seen before. Gravity shifted, lightly, but enough to notice. Tides moved wrong. Machines glitched. And in some parts of the world, time itself stuttered. A man in Nairobi lived the same 5 minutes twice. A woman in Sao Paulo watched her dog blink out of phase for 3 full seconds before returning. The rift over the moon expanded, slowly, silently. It was clear now. The choice was not theoretical. It was coming for them. Back underground in the Iceland command bunker, the council met one final time. The tension inside was near breaking. "We're not ready," Colonel said growled. "We're fractured. We're still bleeding. If we accept now, we walk into the hands of something we don't understand. We trade one master for another. And if we decline," asked Garvey, her voice softer now, almost afraid. "Do we just go back to scraping food from ruins, waiting for the next predator to sniff us out?" "There's a third option," General Iwata said, his eyes locked on the slowly expanding rift above the moon. "We stand alone. We reject ascension. We deny judgment. We tell them we choose ourselves, whatever that means." "But the cost," Alina began. "I know," he interrupted. "But maybe that's the price of staying human." Before anyone could reply, the comms officer cut in. "Sir, you'll want to see this." The screen flickered. A grainy transmission came through, not from space, from Mars. Specifically, Olympus Mons, a base Earth had believed destroyed in the first Varn wave. The face that appeared on the screen was gaunt, bloodied, and alive with fire. Captain Recalder. Or what was left of him. His voice crackled through interference. "If this reaches Earth, know that I lived, barely. I ejected before the core detonated, landed on a fragment, floated for days. Then something found me." He looked upward, eyes unfocused. "They brought me here. Not the Varn. Them. The architects." The room fell still. Calder continued, voice thick with something too large for him to carry. They showed me things, not visions. Histories, futures, every choice we could make and every price that comes with it. He leaned in close, face full of weariness. This isn't about right or wrong. It's about what we want to become. The Varn were the test. The architects are the door, and we're standing on the threshold. Tell Earth this, he looked directly into the camera. If we ascend, we won't be the same. We'll lose parts of ourselves, our pain, our rage, our limits, but we'll become something vast, something no species has ever dared to be. He paused. But if we stay, we keep our soul, our dirt, our blood, our stubborn, stupid, beautiful humanity, and we fight the next storm and the one after that with our fists and our fire. The screen blinked static. He was gone. Alina turned to Iwata, tears in her eyes. It's not a test anymore. No, he agreed. It's a mirror. The vote was held, not by governments, not by generals, but by the people. One message sent to every device. One simple prompt, do we ascend? Earth chose. And on the seventh day, the rift opened wide. The rift split the sky like a wound that would never heal. It pulsed not with light but with invitation. The crimson glow bathed Earth's atmosphere, turning clouds to blood-colored streaks and oceans to mirrors of fire. Time rippled again. Clocks stopped. Machines froze. Even the wind seemed to halt, as if the world itself waited to hear what humanity had decided. And then came the broadcast. Not from a government, not from a council, but from everywhere. Across every surviving screen, speaker, or shard of technology still connected to Earth's fractured networks, the same voice echoed, we choose. We stay. The message carried no anthem, no celebration. It was quiet, steady, unbreakable. Earth had rejected ascension, and the sky responded. Above the moon, the rift changed. Its swirling core of impossible light shimmered, slowed, and collapsed inward, folding into itself like paper burned from the edges. It didn't vanish, not entirely. It left something behind, a shape no bigger than a city, blacker than space, floating in perfect silence. A monolith. And then the final voice of the architects came, not in words but in thought, in pressure felt in the marrow of every living thing, then so be it. You have chosen fire over divinity, will over transcendence, struggle over peace. You remain as you are. But know this, your decision echoes. You are no longer children. Now you are seen. And with that, they were gone. No explosion, no fanfare, just absence, like waking from a dream you couldn't explain. For a moment, Earth stood still. Then the world began to move again, slowly, raggedly, but with purpose. In the days that followed, something changed. Not in the sky, not in the soil, but in the people. There was no miracle recovery, no golden age overnight. But there was clarity, a sense that the world, as broken as it was, belonged to them now. Entirely. The Varn never returned. Rumors spread that the remaining ships scattered into deep space, fleeing not from Earth but from what had seen Earth. They were no longer conquerors. They were refugees. In the ruins of London, people planted gardens in the shell of a fallen battleship. In Mumbai, children played on broken Varn armor like it was just another part of the playground. In Brazil, engineers rebuilt their first clean energy generator from scraps of alien tech and old wind turbines. And above it all, the monolith remained, watching, unmoving, unspoken. Some feared it, others worshipped it. Most ignored it, but all respected it. It was a reminder not of what was denied but of what was earned. Humanity had stood on the edge of godhood and turned away, not out of ignorance but out of choice. They chose their scars. They chose their imperfection. They chose their freedom. Years passed. The galaxy changed. Whispers spread to distant systems that the humans had done the unthinkable. The Varn were dead. The architects had spoken to them, and they had survived. No longer were humans seen as primitives. They were seen as a new force, unpredictable, unforgiving, unrelenting. A species that had chosen war over words and survived the cost. In backwater bars on trading moons, smugglers told stories of Earth, how they stared down gods and refused to blink. On distant worlds, slaves of fallen empires whispered the name human like a prayer. And on Earth, Life moved forward. Not perfect, not painless, but free. In a small cemetery overlooking what was once Washington, D.C., a stone bore a name and a simple inscription, Captain Recalder. He made it count. Above him, the sky was clear. No ships, no gods, just stars waiting, watching, and maybe, just maybe, wondering what humanity would do next.